This is Gemara Baba Kama Daf Pei, and we pick it up on the bottom of Ayin Tes Amid Beis, where we are up to the Gemara, the last medium-sized line towards the bottom of the Amid, Tanu Rabbanan. We begin by dissecting the Mishnah piece by piece. The Mishnah began with the Isser of raising animals in Eretz Yisrael, sheep and goats. One cannot raise in Eretz Yisrael, says the Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan in Megalim Behemendaka. Oh, excuse me. Tanu Rabbanan. One more time. Ein Megadlin Behemadaka Eretz Yisrael. You're not allowed to raise a Behemadaka, a small animal in Eretz Yisrael. Aval Megadlin, but you're allowed to raise them Bechayroshin Sheba in the forest of Eretz Yisrael. Bisuria, and in Syria, afilu b'yishav, even in the domesticated areas, even in the areas that people live, you're allowed to raise such animals. Ve'in sarach loymar, and this is needless to say, ve'in sarach loymar, b'chutz la'aretz, you're allowed to have such animals. That's Brisa number 1. Brisa number 2 teaches, Tanu Rabbanan, Ein Megalin. Excuse me, we're having highlighting issues. There you go. Tanu Rabbanan, Ein Megalin Behema Daka Ba'eretz Yisrael. Don't raise a small animal in Eretz Yisrael. Aval, however, Megalin Ba'midbar. You're allowed to raise them in the desert, Shebi Yehuda, Midbar Shebi Svar Akoi, and the desert of the port of Akoi. Even though it said you're not allowed to raise a behema daka in Eretz Yisrael, you're allowed to raise a large animal. Why? Chazal never make a gezerah unless the majority of the people are able to stand by such a gezerah, a klal that we have in gezeros. And therefore teaches the second brisa that to make a gzeira that you can't have a large animal would be a gzeira that people would not be able to handle, and therefore we would never make such a gzeira. Why not? The Gemara now explains because behema daka efshel lahavi mechutz laaretz. Behema daka you could always bring from chutz laaretz if you need such an animal. Whereas behema just one Rashi. Rashi, 7 lines to the end of the Amid, points out, what do you need? What's the critical need for a behema gasa? Says Rashi, to carry packages and for plowing. Back into the Gemara, 4 lines at the bottom, says the Gemara, behema gasa, it is impossible, they're too large, lahavi mechutz laaretz, to bring from chutz laaretz. And says the Gemara, 3 lines at the bottom, and how does one go about bringing a behema daka from chutz laaretz? Aval, however, mashehu koydem haregel shleishim yom. You're allowed to have such an animal within or prior to Yom Tif for 30 days. V'koydem mishtem b'noi shleishim yom, or before one's son's wedding for 30 days. Ubelvad, but provided, 2 lines from the bottom, he does not hold it for 30 days from the final purchase. So says the Gemara, what's this last halacha that he can't hold it for 30 days from the final purchase? Now, just to point out, why are we like all of a sudden more lenient if someone's making a chasana? And the simple reason is, it's because this is the food he's going to serve. He's allowed to have these animals for 30 days because then he will shech them and he'll serve them at the chasana. So explains the Gemara, I would have thought, regel, that if the Yom Tov finished, and from the moment that he bought the animal until right now, once Yom Tov is over, it's not yet 30 days. So I would think you have a 30-day a time frame. So you're allowed to keep the animal till the 30 days are up. To teach you that no, that is not allowed, said the Gemara, loy nema tlasin mishra shari le'lishuyi. Don't say that you have a clean pass, that for 30 days you could retain an animal. Alakiman dinavigli regel. Once the yontav ends, loy mi baila shuye, he should not hold on to the animal any longer. And that was what the final statement of the Brisa was teaching. And we turn over to Daf Peyam at Aleph, says the Gemara, v'hataboch, and a butcher, loikeach v'sheichet, loikeach v'shoyeh. He could purchase animal and shech them. He could purchase animal and hold them up to 30 days before the market. Ubelvad sheyisha ha'aguna shebehen lamid yoim. He cannot hold on to the aguna shebehem for more than 30 days. Now, what's the aguna shebehem? So Rashi says it comes from not aguna as in one doesn't have a spouse, but ha-meucheres, the one that he purchased last, that he purchased it close to the marketplace. Similarly, like we saw by Yontif, it's not that you have a 30-day grace period, and therefore even after the Yom HaShok passed, if you bought an animal within the week, let's say, you would have a few weeks after. No, once the Yom HaShok is over, you have to get rid of the animals. Continues the Gemara on the second line of Peyam and Aleph. Shalu Talmidav es Rav Gamliel. The Talmidim asked Rav Gamliel the following Shaila, which, as we'll see, is really related to what we just spoke about. Ma'u legadel. What is the status with raising small animals in Eretz Yisrael? Amr lehen, responds Rav Gamliel that it is indeed mutter. They ask Vatanan, or the Gemara asks, Ein migadlin. Rav Gamliel, how can you say you can raise an animal? We know you're not allowed to. Rather, says the Gemara, the Talmidim are asking the following: Ma'ulishais, are you allowed to hold on to an animal for more than 30 days? And on that, Rav Gamliel was being mekel amar lehen muter. Ubelvad. It cannot go out and graze with your other animals. Ela kushra bekare hamita. Rather, you have to tie it up at the leg of the bed. You're allowed to hold on to the animal for his own personal reasons, as we'll see in a moment, but you have to keep it secured inside your house. And this is where Rav Gamliel is arguing on the Shita that we just saw, that the other Shita, which we'll call the Chachamim, was holding that you're never allowed to keep them for more than 30 days, even in the scenario that it's tied up, etc. Says the Gemara, Tanara Banan, which will further articulate that which Rav Gamliel just said, Maisa b'chassid echad. There was a story with a certain chassid, a certain pious individual, Shaya Gaineach Milibai. He had heart pains. He was groaning from his heart. And he asked the doctors, there's nothing for you to do. Add one takana, and I believe this remedy actually has come more common nowadays for different diseases. You have to nurse fresh milk from a live animal every single morning. So listen, he has heart pains. They bring him a goat, and what happens? He tied it to the legs of his bed. And indeed, he's nursing from the goat each and every morning. After a bunch of days, so this guy's friends come to check up on him. How you doing? And they see the goat at the legs of the bed. They turn around, and they say, there must be robbers in this house. We should visit him. Now, what he means by listin izuyim means that the same way, look at Rashi. Rashi is about 8 lines into the narrow lines. Listim izuyin. If this guy holds on to such an animal, it must be that the animal grazes in other people's fields. Therefore, he's considered a ganav, a gazlan. Yashvu ubadku. So the Rabbanan sat down, they looked into what this guy was doing. They didn't find that he did anything wrong. The only thing that he did wrong was seemingly the fact that he had this goat, which they felt that therefore he was bringing him to Gezela. And even this Sadiq at the time that he was being nifter said, Amr Yodani, I know. She'en bi oven ela oven oisa is. The only oven he had is that he kept the goat for more than 30 days. Shavarti al divri chaveri, that he was over on the halachas of his friends. And of course, it's a discussion over here, but the man was sick. It seemed to be sekanas nefashos, etc., etc. Amar Rabbi Yishmael. We're at the two dots, approximately 25 lines from the white line, says Rabbi Yishmael. For the Balabatim, for the people that lived in the Galil, Hayu Beis Abba was my father's family. And why was this whole family destroyed? Because they would plow in, they would let their animals graze marin b'chayrashim in the forest, v'doyin dinei maminis b'yachid, and they would don cases even with one person. And even though they had fields next to the houses, the small field, umavirin derech aleha, and they were just passed by it, through it, to get to the forest and graze there. That's the reason why the family was destroyed, as they were not particular on letting where their animals grazed. Says the Gemara Tanarabanan, Roya Shasa Tshuva Ein Mechayvin Limkar Miyad. A shepherd that he wants to do tshuva, as he raised animals, that goats and sheep in Eretz Yisrael, they grazed in the fields. Ein Mechayvin Limkar Miyad. We don't require him to sell his animals right away. Rather, he sells them little by little. We don't say, you want to do tshuva, okay, that's it. Garage sale, get rid of everything. No, fire sale. Get rid of it one by one. And similarly, klavim, we have a ger that has dogs and pigs inside his Yerusha, and he also doesn't want to keep them. He wants to do what's right. Similarly, ein mechayavin oisai limkar miyad. In a third case, so makes a neder to get married, and so makes a neder to buy a house in Eretz Yisrael. He does not have to do it right away. Says again, he's allowed to wait until he finds the one that is appropriate for him. And finally, concludes this portion of the Gemara, 8 lines from the white lines. There was a story, B'isha Achaz, with a woman, Sheyabana, Meitzar La, whose son was causing her pain. V'kavsa, she got up and she jumped, and Ishra, and she swore, Komi Sheyavai, Eini Machzirasai. And she says, whoever comes first, Komi Sheyavai, Eini Machzirasai, I won't turn him away. She just wanted to marry off her son. The kafsa allow b'nei adam, and people who are not appropriate came. This woman did not have in mind only one who is fitting for her, and therefore she does not have to marry off the child right away. And similarly, if she wanted to marry someone for herself, not for her son, said, whoever comes, I'm going to marry. But Chamabaskin, then no, she had to wait for the right one, similar to what we just saw a moment ago, finding a house, finding a shidduch. One is allowed to wait for the right one. Continues the Gemara, Kishem, following up on the din in the Mishnah, that you're not allowed to raise Kishem Shem Daka, just like you're not allowed to raise a small animal, domesticated animal in Eretz Yisrael. One is not allowed to raise Chaya Daka. One is not allowed to raise undomesticated animals, deers and foxes. Rabbi Yishmael, Megadlin Klavim, you're allowed to raise dogs, Vikoipin, and monkey, Klavim, Kofrim, cats, One more time. Klavim kofrim, that's a small dog. Chatulim is a cat. Vekupin, those were the monkeys. There it is. V'choldais silnaim, and some type of weasels. Why are you allowed to raise all these? Asuyin lenaker esabayis. Because what do? They are there to clean the house. My chayledes, says the Gemara, what is chayledes sinayim? What are these bush weasels? Amr Rav Yehuda, sharatza charza. It's a creeping, digging animal. Vikadamri charza denakti charza. It's a stinging animal. Tikatini, if it's small, excuse me, tikatini shakye, whose thighs are small, varai, and it eats rebeni varadini, between the bushes. Umay sharatza, what does it mean? It's creeping. De matatoi shakei, that the thighs are underneath it, that it sort of looks always like it's creeping like a weasel, and it would eat the stuff, and that's the reason why you're allowed to keep it around in your house. Continues the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda, the fourth wide line. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, Asinu Asmeinu B'Bavel, Keretz Yisrael, Lebehema Dako. Says Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, we in Bavel made ourselves like Eretz Yisrael with regard to a small domesticated animal, meaning that they would not raise them. What about your animal? You have an animal. My wife Chayva watches the animal from going into anyone else's field. Libna, and they responded a strong statement that Chayva should bury your sons, referring to Chayva and his children. It says the Gemara, Rachmana Lisan, Kuli Shani Dravada Barava Loi Kayim Zare. After Chachamim says such a line, he was never able to have children. The Rav Kahana Michayva, from his wife Chayva. Yiktiam, another lashon Amrav Huna Amarav Asinu Atzmeinu Bebavel Karetz Yisrael Beimedaka. And then what happened? Mechiasa Rav Lebavel. Just when Rav came to Bavel, that's the end of the story. He says the Gemara. Rav Ushma v'Ravasi eklai lebei shavua lebei svua haben. They went outside. Rav and Shmuel and Ravasi went outside the house of a ben shavua, the son of the week of a son. What's that going on there? Rashi says it's actually a bris milah, and the bris was referred to as bris milah al shem sha'avra aleh shiva yamim. It's the 8th day, so it's called the Shvua Haben. Interesting. Varmila, and some say Lebein Yeshua Haben. They met outside the house of a Yeshua, of a salvation, which Rashi says is a Pidyon Haben. Rav Lo'ayel Kami de Shmuel. So Rav did not go into the house before Shmuel, as we turn over to Pei Amid Beis. Shmuel Lo'ayel Kami de Rav Asi. Shmuel would not go in front of Rav Asi. Rav Asi loyal kamei de Rav. So they're each waiting for each other. Amri man nitrach. So they decided, okay, so what should we do? Meaning, someone has to let someone else go in. So let two people enter and one will wait back. So they concluded, nitrach Shmuel v'nesi Rav Ravasi. Shmuel waited and Rav and Ravasi entered. V'nirtach Rav oy Ravasi. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. Why was Shmuel the one that waited? Let Rav Ravasi wait. Explains the Gemara, Rav Milsa Ba'almahu David Leil Shmuel. Rav was merely being nice towards Shmuel Mishamahu Maisa because of the story Delataye where he cursed Shmuel. Adabre Rav Alei. Rav took upon himself to give Shmuel kavod, but in reality Rav was greater, and that's the reason why Shmuel was the one that waited outside. So back to the story. Adhachi Vachi Asa Shunra Kate. As Shmuel's waiting outside, a cat came and Kate liyade dinuka bit off the hand of a child. Nafik Rav Darash. Rav went out and learned. Chatul mota lehargai v'asar lekayama. You let it kill a cat, and you're not let it keep it. V'cheinim by misham gezel. And one doesn't have to worry about gezel. V'ima misham hashav aveida lebailim. You don't have to worry about returning it to the owner. Says the Gemara of Akiva Da'amre Motel Hargo. Once you tell me you're allowed to keep it, my neo su asr lekaima. What do you mean that it's asr to keep it? Explains the Gemara. I would have thought you're allowed to kill the cat there's no Isser, but meaning you're allowed to kill it, but there's no proper Isser to own it, Kamash Malan, that it's also to keep the cat. So this is the story. They took matters into their own hands and said, Rava, you could get rid of the cat. Amri, they said further, 8 lines from the wide lines. The first one line is Amri. If there's no gezel, of course there's no hashav aveda lebaylim. Amar Ravina, la'ira is referring to its hides, to its skins. So after finally understanding what's going on, asked the Gemara a kasha. Meisvei Rashba Omer asked of Shimon Elazar. Negadlin klavim kofrim v'chatulin v'chuvim v'chol doisin amimnei shasuyin l'nakir esabayis. What do we learn in Amid Aleph? They are allowed to raise all these animals. Why? Because these are animals that clean the house. So why are you saying that the cat, Rav, you just said you get rid of it, you kill the cat, etc.? Explains the Gemara, loy kasha habe ochma. Black one, those are harmless. But the white cat, which is prone to attack people, that's when you're allowed to kill it. Says the Gemara, the whole story with the Rav is a black cat. Explains the Gemara, Hasam ochma bar chayuvra. There was a black cat that was the son of a white cat. That's the reason why it was violent like the white cat. I asked the Gemara in the last narrow line, Vahami Bayi Ravina. But Ravina asked, the Bayi Ravina, Ochma bar chiyuva ma'u, what is the story? What is the din of a black cat, the son of a white cat? Kimi Bayi Ravina. So explains the Gemara, meaning he didn't know. So explains the Gemara, Kibar Lerina, Ochma bar chiyura, bar ochma, a black cat, the son of a white cat, the son of a black cat. And that's when he wasn't sure, does it have the nature of the white cat in between that is dangerous? Or Lamaisa, its grandfather was a black cat, it is a black cat, therefore it's not dangerous. Maisa Derav Ochma bar chiyura, who? But the story was a black cat, the son of a white, the son of a white. Those are dangerous, and that's why he killed the cat. For a few more moments, we dive back into the sugya of actually completely random, as we'll see that it's not even clear even how to connect these halachis. But let's see, in the third wide line of Peyamibes, Amar Rav Bar Papa Mishum Rav Abba Bar Papa. So Rav Bar Papa said the name of Rav Abba Bar Papa. Mishum Rav Ada Bar Papa. Varmilam Rav Abba Bar Papa. Mishum Rav Chia Bar Papa. Mishum Rav Ach Bar Papa. Sounds like you see him. So many papas. Varmilam Rav Abba Bar Papa. Mishum Rav Ach Bar Papa. Mishum Rav Chanina Bar Papa. Okay, now that we got all the names straight, what do they say? Batriyan, we cry out, Alachichuch b'Shabbos. We cry out over scratchings on Shabbos. If there's a plague of boils, you're allowed to daven in public on Shabbos. V'deles haneneles loy b'mheira tipatach, and the door closed will not quickly open. Meaning, when someone unfortunately stops having success in life, it takes a time for it to reopen that door of success. You're allowed to write a document on a house that one purchases in Eretz Yisrael. Afilu b'Shabbos, because of the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. So starts the Gemara and let's deal with these three halachas one by one. Number one, Meisvei asked the Gemara, and other calamities that come on the people, on the public, shiluach lechashav akravim, lo hayamatriyim, ella, lo hayamatriyim, ella tzayakim. Ask the Gemara that the Brisa says for all other issues, chichuch, his boils, chagav, his locusts, vov, his flies, serious wasps, yatush, his mosquitoes, shiluach, nechashim, is there snakes flying around, vakravim, and scorpions, and all of these things, says the Brisa, lo matri, and they would not cry out, elatzayakin, they wouldn't cry out in public, just each individual person would daven. So what do we see? That we see for boils, we do not cry out in public. Says the Gemara, loy kasha kan velach, the Brisa talking about moist boils, kan v'yavesh, Whereas Rav Papa and his children were talking about the dry boils, which are more deadly, so we cried in public. Amar Rav Yeshua ben Levi, Shechina Bakri Shvachal Yisraim, Lach mi bachos v'yavish mi b'fneim, was moist on the outside and dry on the inside. Shenamar, v'hi Shechina babuos barech ba'adam, uva be'ema. Now, what was the second statement there of Papa and his children said over? Delas and Helas, a door that closes. Loibim Heir Tipatach asks the Gemara, 8 lines from the bottom. Maihi, what's this? Marzucha Amar Semicha. Marzucha says, this is Semicha, this is to become a Rav. That if for some reason he was prevented, he's not going to quickly get Semicha later. Rav Ashi Amar Kula Marian Loi, Loibim Heira. If he's treated badly, he's not going to get good right away. He'll never get good. But he says, the Gemara, you're just saying over his own issues. But of course, even if someone's having issues, it could be reversed through the appropriate tefillah, and eventually things come around. Says the Gemara, finally, Yisrael. You'll have to write a document on it even on Shabbos. Ask the Gemara 5 lines from the bottom. Shabbos? You got to write on Shabbos? What does that mean? Rava means a Rava taught Hasam. It doesn't mean you write. It means that we're making an Amir La'akum to purchase a house. Damir lenachri shvosi tenisa derabanan misha b'Eretz Yisrael logazu be'irabanan. Finally concludes the Gemara Mashul and Achmeni Am Rav Yonasan halokech ir b'Eretz Yisrael koifenis alikach loiderech ma'abaru chaysel. We make a purchase a road from all 4 directions misha b'Eretz Yisrael to make it easier to settle the land of Eretz Yisrael. We'll pick it up from the bottom of the next year.